Secretly recorded from deep inside the bowels of a decommissioned missile silo, we bring you the man, one single man who wants to bring light to the darkness and dark to the lightness. Although he's not always right, he is always certain. So now, with security protocols in place, the protesters have been forced back behind the barricades and the blast doors are now sealed. Without further delay, let me introduce you to the host of Hutcast, Mr. Tim Hutner.
Thank you, Sergeant at Arms. You can now take your post. The views and opinions expressed in this program are solely those of the individual and participants. These views and opinions expressed do not represent those of the host or the show. The opinions in this broadcast are not to replace your legal, medical, or spiritual professionals. Cardio Miracle does not treat, cure, diagnose, or mitigate any disease. We just give the body's cutting-edge nutrient delivery, and the body does the rest. Welcome to Hutcast. Today, 12/3/2023, we're going to put Mr. Mike Smith. He has got a story that you all need to listen to, and he's got some education, and I'll tell you what, we got some pretty neat stuff going on here. And Mike, are you there?
I am.
Okay. Well,
how are you?
I am well. Thanks for joining us on the show. We're gonna cut the pre-roll, and we're gonna go into a main one here. So stand by for Hutcast. We'll be right back. The current healthcare system is not meeting the needs of real people. People are demanding better care, better options, and want results. So Gareth Care has launched and is advocating for those in the U.S. and internationally, as people are realizing the controlled system has not been there for them. If you want your own independent advocate that is not controlled by big corporations, call or text and enroll today to get your advocate for your needs, serving all ages. For any healthcare needs you might have, you matter. Here's how you get started. www.garethcare.com. That is GRAITHCARE.com. Call Gareth Care Direct at 469-864-7149. Call or text the questions to Healthcare Sucks and get an advocate with Gareth Care. 469-864-7149. Mention Hutcast and you will get an additional 10% discount on your first advocacy bundle. The staff at Gareth Care will take care of you. Remember, mention Hutcast and get that extra 10% off your first bundle of time. And this is all brought to you from Gareth Care. All right, as mentioned in pre-roll, Mike Smith. Got a heck of a resume. I've read through it. I did as much research as I could. I got 15 questions for you, Mike. Are you there?
Sure.
It's quite an impressive resume. I'm like reading this, going, okay, why doesn't this guy run for president?
Oh, that's very kind. Well, I don't know. You know, I think I'm too old at this point. But
it always adds up, doesn't it? The age.
It catches you. Well, I'm an athlete, right? So it catches you in sports, and it catches you in a lot of things. But
yeah.
But hopefully today, 58 is the new 48.
We keep telling ourselves that, don't we?
Yeah, I like to, and I'm trying. You don't have to get into this, Tim, but I have 10 children, so imagine how many grandchildren are going to come from 10 children. I have 3 grandchildren already, and I just want to be around, and I want to teach them and play with them, and I feel like we live in a world where, oh my gosh, common sense and common decency and right and wrong is kind of being thrown out the world and out the window, I should say, and I want to be that voice to my family and my generations.
Very well said. We have a moniker here that says common sense ain't common enough.
True.
So let's light up question number 1 here. In the early years in high school sports, Michael, you've achieved an extraordinary level of success, multiple sports during your high school years, earnings, titles, California Player of the Year in football, basketball, volleyball. How do you manage to excel in all these sports simultaneously? And what impact did this diverse athletic background have in your future career?
That's a great question. So I don't come from super athletic parents, but I come from super loving parents and super supportive parents. I'm the third of 5 children. So like I have an older brother before me who does play basketball. I have a sister before me who is a concert violinist. I should say my father's an engineer. My mom's an artist and a violinist. And my dad came out like really bright, book smart, super tall, and like big. He's a big guy, like broad shoulders and heavy footed and heavy boned, if that makes sense. He's built at 6'8" more like an offensive lineman than he is a basketball player. My mom is, although 5'8", she's a violinist. She's fine motor skilled. She's hyper coordinated, and she's creative and left brained. And my dad very right brained and analytical. And I kind of came out the morph of the two. And at 6'10", to what I reached my senior year in high school, I was nimble and fleet of foot and hyper coordinated and not a lineman. I was more of a gazelle. I could run and jump and throw a ball and catch a ball and see angles. And I don't know if that stuff is, born and you're born with it or you learn it, right? I don't know if it's innate or God-given, or if just playing sports in my youth, all through those young years, I developed those skills, but it's probably a combination of the both. And I guess was willing to try everything. So, body type, I was more built like a basketball player, but athletically, I tried everything. So I'm a 4-sport guy in high school. That includes baseball, which I didn't play for the school, but I did play for the leagues or the city. And then in high school, I played basketball, football, and volleyball. And I think I was always good at basketball and worked really hard at that. Football was kind of just something I decided to play in high school. And I went to a football powerhouse high school, and they put me at the quarterback position. And I just think I had the right mindset or brain for it. Like our coaching schemes were years ahead of everyone else's. And so thanks to them. And they relied on me and my brain. And honestly, Tim, I would walk up to the line and dissect the defense and what they were going to do before I ever took a snap. And this will sound terrible, but it really was easy. And I don't even know how else to explain that. But the coaches said, make this read and read this free safety, and you'll know exactly what they're going to do. And other than a blitz, which you'll also be able to detect, you'll know which guy will be open before you ever drop back. And it was like, I don't know. It felt like I was playing chess and they were playing checkers. And I think we lost one game in 4 years of high school football, and culminated my senior year with winning the, let's call it the Southern California State Championship. And I broke every record in, high school football in California, but I never considered myself great at football. Isn't that funny? But I will say that event, that diversity that you mentioned, fueled my confidence, and that football title and what it means to perform a role with 10 other offensive players and 11 other defenders and your special teams, and the role of 50 guys united in one cause, to me is my greatest sports memory, if that makes sense, and catapulted me to All-American status in college basketball, and then later a first-round draft pick in the NBA. And I don't know, it helped me. It made me think maybe I was a little bit different than the next guy I was up against, or had an edge. And whether it was true or not, I believed it. And sometimes belief is everything.
Well, you touched on my next question. College experience at BYU. So at Brigham Young University, you majored in Spanish with a minor in broadcasting while also excelling in sports. How did your academic pursuits complement the athletic career? How did they shape your path into the broadcasting?
Wow, great question. I was destined to be a orthopedic surgeon, wanted to be a doctor, felt like I would be a doctor. My mom was a registered nurse. That was kind of what was ingrained in me, even though my dad was in sales and I don't come from a line of doctors. But it just felt like that's what I would do and should do. And so I'm pre-med for 3 of those 4 years. So let's say a Spanish major and a zoology minor, or a double major, with every intent on going to med school after college. The Spanish, because I served an LDS mission after my first year of college. So played 1 year, went on a mission to Argentina for 2, and then came back and played 3 years. And that 2 years away really aided me in my maturity. It aided my body. I was super slender before then, and it kind of, my body matured. I came back from that 2-year mission, a 21-year-old sophomore, and 6'10" and now 225 pounds, and gave me the confidence that I could do hard things. Mm-hmm. And live in adversity and thrive in adversity and be calm under pressure. And here I was living in the most extreme conditions in the south of Argentina. I came back to college and I was like, wow. And it also told me that the guys that I was, All-American with in high school were now seniors in college and about to be drafted into the NBA. And I was like, okay, well, I know I'm as good as those guys. So I went from, let's say, an average freshman year to coming back as a 21-year-old sophomore, not having played any basketball in Argentina or trained at all. But mentally, I was more prepared, and I knew I could do it. And so I went from that freshman year to sophomore year, player of the conference, and led the conference in scoring and all those things, which doesn't usually happen by your sophomore year. So I really felt like that helped me. Now, fast forward senior year, I kind of feel like I'm going to be drafted. At least I know that because I'm being contacted by every agent in the world after my junior year.
Well, hold on a second now. You're like way in front of me. So your transition to professional sports, right?
Well, I'm just going to get you to the broadcasting because now I realize I may not be going to med school. And so senior year, I added a minor in broadcasting just so I could finish my degree. I didn't want to get drafted and have to come back to school. So that's how I end up a Spanish major and a broadcasting minor, so I could finish in 4 years and then see what the professional ranks offered me.
Wow, that's incredible. Because you were just about to go to my next question, and I went, let me ask it first. So that transition to professional sports, being 13th overall pick in the '89 NBA draft by Boston Celtics, and the first return missionary to be chosen within the first round is a remarkable achievement itself. Can you share the experiences and challenges during the transition from college sports to NBA?
Yeah, and they were monumental. They were difficult, and I felt like I was good enough. I was a little bit older than most draft picks, right? So now I'm a 23-year-old senior drafted in the summer of '89, just about to turn 24. So that's different in one respect, but and some NBA teams would shy away from that. Not that I wasn't one of the top 15 players in the country, but they want young guys, which has evolved today. I now work for the Utah Jazz. They have 3 19-year-old rookies. And so the NBA kind of feels like the sooner we get you, the sooner we can untrain the college world and the college game and teach you the pro game. So I was a little bit different in that respect because I was a couple years older. But it was a thrill for me. And you mentioned the missionary part. That's important to me because my religion, my faith, my belief in God, my love of a divine being and creator and respect to them and him is at the core of all of my belief system. And so when asked to go do that after my freshman year, willingly I did it. But before me, no one had ever done that and made it to the NBA. And so I thought that was super cool that I kind of, at that point in my life, chose to honor God and go do his work and then let the rest fall where it may. And I still became a first-round pick.
Wow.
There have been a couple since me who have done it. Mark Madsen, who went to Stanford, was a late first-round draft pick, and a guy named Sean Bradley was also a BYU player after me who was 7'6", believe it or not. So he was kind of an anomaly, but he did serve a mission in Australia and then went right to the pros. But for me, that was important. And some people would say it hindered me or made me a little softer. And, it's hard to become a disciple of Christ and teach meekness and, love of everyone and then walk into the NBA world where you're fighting for your life and battling for jobs and playing with the best of the best. I think one thing had nothing to do with the other. I think my mission gave me a core belief system in myself that I could accomplish hard things. And the NBA is just the NBA. It's the finest of the finest. And if you think about it, if you're a great high school player, you may have a chance to go play college. But when you get to college, every guy there was not only the best at his high school, he's probably the best in his conference.
Oh, boy.
And then when you get to college, if you're going to make it, you better be the best on your team, and then you better be the best 2 or 3 in your conference, and then you better be, good enough and tough enough and unique enough that your skill set translates to the NBA. And so my NBA career was not great. I honestly feel like I went to the wrong team. In a lot of ways, it was just opening of my mind to play with such great talents like Larry Bird and Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish and Dennis Johnson. Those are my teammates. Those 3 big guys I mentioned are all Hall of Famers, and they all play in front of me on the front court. And what I didn't realize then is you really need to get established in your first 1 or 2 years in the NBA to prove you belong, not only to yourself, but to everyone else. And I joined a veteran team that had won 3 championships in the 80s. I think they felt like I was the heir apparent to McHale or Bird, which was great on one regard. But on the other regard, those guys weren't giving up their spots.
Right.
And it was an NBA back then in the late 80s where guys played a lot. There was no such thing as load management. There was no such thing as, LeBron's care of his body and the ability to, manage minutes. And, Larry Bird is my position. He's the guy in front of me. I'm his replacement. And he played 44 of the 48 minutes every single night. And bless his heart, because fans were treated to one of the greatest players of all time. I love that he did that. It wasn't great for me.
Yeah.
Because it meant I got 4 to 5 to 6 minutes a game and not time on the court with him where my skills would have shined. And so I ended up playing like 3 years with the Celtics, another year with the Clippers, and then I go to Europe and play 4 years, and heck, by 8 years professional, I almost felt like a young family's duties and really the difficulty of living and playing overseas while raising a young family kind of almost necessitated that I choose a new career path and move on. But I cherished my time. I learned from the best. How many guys can say, and Tim, 1 year after I finished, I still tried to play one final year. And so that year I spent the summer playing with Magic Johnson. And Magic was retired. He was HIV positive, but he couldn't get it out of his system. So he took a team of 12 of us that traveled the world and would play any team designed or put together, orchestrated to beat us. And Magic's whole goal was to spend 2 years and go 100-0. And I'm a part of that team for a year. So, in essence, I got to play with Bird, play with Magic, and play against Michael Jordan. So, I could look back and say, yeah, I was never an all-star and never won a championship, and I didn't play for 15 years and retire with $20 million in the bank. But now that I'm 58, I tell that story when I speak or open up at an engagement, and they're like, holy cow, played with Bird, Magic, and against Michael. That's it's kind of pretty cool. So I consider myself very blessed.
Well, now your international career, you played professional basketball in Europe, particularly Spain and Italy. How did this international experience differ from playing in the NBA, and what unique challenges did that present?
So over there, you have hyper talented guards and forwards. When I played in the NBA, it's a little bit different than now. When I played in the NBA, there's 26 teams with 12 guys. So that's less than 300 players. Today, there's 30 teams with 15 players each. So there's 450 players. So when people tell me today, oh, you couldn't play in today's NBA, I'm like, you've lost your mind. My NBA 30 years ago, top to bottom, is way better than your watered down NBA today. And they're like, oh yeah, but the athletes today. I go, yeah, your today's NBA is looking for positionless players who are 6'9" and can play guard and shoot and run and jump. And not that we didn't have the same, we just had fewer of them and better. The point I'm getting at is that my NBA of 12 players had all teams had 3-point guards and 3 centers, if you can believe it. And then the rest was mixed in with, let's call them shooting guards, small forwards, big forwards. But half of your roster were your point guards and your centers. Why? The game was designed that way. A guard brought it up. He ran the show. What did you try and do on offense? You tried to post up your big guys. And if you had a center who could post up, like a Kareem, like a Wilt, like a Patrick Ewing, that's how you scored. And so the game was very different. It was less open than it is today. It was more designed for a big player. I was a shooting small forward. I was cut like a Bird or a Nowitzki. Players today who are a Kevin Durant. I was a poor man's Kevin Durant because I was a 6'10" white guy. He's a 6'11", slender guard who can shoot from anywhere.
Right.
Yeah, I think he's the greatest scorer in our game since Michael Jordan.
Wow.
But point being, as I transitioned from NBA to Europe did not have superstar bigs. It just didn't. They had lots of guards, and if there were a talented big, like an Arvydas Sabonis from Russia or Lithuania, he was then in the NBA, if that makes sense. If you were a talented 7-footer like a Vlade Divac, a Nikola Jokic today, you were, gobbled up by the NBA and you were on an NBA roster. And almost every team had one. So if I say every NBA team had 3 centers, one of them was a Euro center like a Uwe Blab or a Rick Smits. It's just kind of the way it was.
Sure.
Thus, when I go to Europe and play, I'm just going to say there weren't as many 6'10" guys like me who were as talented as I was. And so where I didn't find great success in the NBA, even though I had votes for all rookie team, I just never ever found the right spot. In Europe, I immediately found success. I'm the leading American scorer in Italy my first year. I'm the leading American scorer in the Spanish leagues my second, third, and fourth years. I lead the league in free throw percentage and, scoring 28 to 30 points a game. The only guy who outscored me at that time when I played in Europe was a guy named Oscar Schmidt. And some basketball fans will recognize him. He's a Hall of Famer. He's Brazilian. He never played in the NBA, but came to acclaim like in the '84 Olympics when Brazil played the Dream Team, the first Dream Team with Jordan, and that Oscar Schmidt put up 40 on Team USA. So he goes to Italy and Spain, the same places I go, and he shoots it every time, and he's just a talented 6'7", phenomenal player. Probably not fast enough or athletic enough to ever play in the NBA back in those days. But my game did translate to the European leagues, and it was much more wide open and much more versatile. And so my ability at my height to shoot, pass, and score became an asset to those teams over there, and I flourished and thrived and had a blast.
Wow. That's a whole lot going on, isn't it?
It's a lot for a kid.
Huh?
And I can say kid looking back, but we're talking about my NBA run goes from like age 23 to 28. And then I go play in Europe from 28 to 33. I'm still a young guy, and I'm having children, right? 1 year over there, I'm living in Madrid, Spain. My 2 young kids are in the American school and speaking fluent Spanish, and I'm trying to raise a family. I then have a 3rd kid. And yeah, you don't think about it when you're in the middle of it. But if I asked a 25-year-old today, they'd be like, wow, that's a lot. and I certainly didn't plan it that way, right? It's just a lot going on. And I'm chasing a career that is in some ways floundering because I can't get back to the NBA, and they'd rather go for somebody younger at that point. And at the same time, I'm conflicted. Like, do I keep living in Europe and playing? I'm now one of the top players over here, but my family and kids don't really want to be there. They'd rather be home with friends, and because we'd go home every summer for 2-3 months and congregate with families and young kids, and then all of a sudden we'd say goodbye and go do it again. And so there was a lot going on at that time.
Now you've jumped forward here to the broadcasting career highlights. You've had a successful broadcasting career, including a stint with the #1 analyst of all NBA teams, Sports Illustrated, 2007, 2008. What has been some of the most memorable moments or games that you've commented on?
Oh, broadcasting career or highlights. I realized early on, okay, I make the transition, and it's almost serendipitous that I do it because I'm in Utah. My home's in California, but I feel like I can play 2 more years. So prior to another basketball season beginning, I go to Utah to train in the altitude.
Okay.
And live at my sister's for like 6 weeks. And I'm running and lifting and playing basketball with the BYU basketball team as an older guy, like 32 or 33. But still have a lot in the tank. I've discovered yoga at this point. I'm super flexible and fit, and I feel like I'm in the best shape of my life. But it's funny, your NBA people aren't calling. I can go to Europe and play, but the money's not fantastic. It's enough. And you can put some away, but it's getting to the point where I'm like, how long am I going to chase this? But it's almost at that point, Tim, all I know. And so I feel like I'm a little bit stuck as I look back, chasing a dream that is expiring or vanishing. But there's some fear there too, right? I don't know that I'm going to be a good player, or I don't know, better said, that I'm going to be a successful businessman or end up being an Emmy Award-winning broadcaster. I don't know any of those things at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a little bit of fear of the unknown. But the BYU athletic director approaches me and says, hey, I see you here playing with the guys. You can clearly still play. If something doesn't come about this year, would you consider doing television for our basketball games this year? And I said, what does that look like? And he said, well, we'll pay you $1,000 a game, probably have 20 games for you. And I said, well, I live in California. They said, that's fine. We'll fly you in. And sure enough, I make that decision when no real offer presents itself, none from the NBA. I could go back to Europe, but I'm kind of over it. And so I make that transition. I do 2 years of BYU basketball games, which isn't enough to live on, but it's a foot in the door, and it teaches me the craft of broadcasting at maybe not the highest level, although we are working for like the NBC affiliate in Salt Lake City, which is not bad level, but it's friendly fire. I'm a known name to the BYU fans, and it turns out I like it. I'm good at it. I work my tail off at it. And the next summer, I decide, well, heck, I want to do this at the highest level. So I called the Clippers. The Clippers are the last team I played for in the NBA.
Okay.
And, I grew up in LA. And so I call them and I say, hey, I'd like to broadcast your games. And they said, well, we have longtime broadcaster A and longtime broadcaster B, who's Bill Walton. He's a Hall of Famer. He says, we're going to continue with them. And I said, what about radio? And they said, well, our radio guy he's a play-by-play guy. He said, you're a former athlete. And he's a longtime radio stud. And I'm like, crap. I go, well, I'm fluent in Spanish. I said, let me broadcast your games on the radio in Spanish.
Okay.
And they're like, no. They're like, that's ridiculous. And I said, well, the Lakers have a Spanish television broadcast and radio. You're in the same market.
Yeah.
I said, let's go create it. And, they said, well, we don't have the station. We don't have the ads. I said, listen, I'll find the station. I'll go sell the ads. And they're like, can you broadcast in Spanish? A, and B, can you do it play by play? And Tim, the answer was no and no. And I said yes and yes.
Well,
but they called me back 2 weeks later and said, no, we've decided not to do it. And that was probably typical of Clipper management at the time. They weren't risk takers. They were bottom feeders and, just kind of really yielding the fruits of the NBA as a whole, but they weren't really innovative and changing anything. And
sure.
the odd thing is, it's wonderful how God works sometimes. Because I made that request to them, they then called me back, and I don't know what I'm going to do the next year. I guess broadcast another year of college games. But they called me back and they said, hey, since you can do play-by-play, we're not thrilled with our radio guy in English.
Okay.
Do you want to send us a tape and put together a reel of you doing play-by-play? Okay, so here's where it gets crazy. The current TV broadcaster for the Clippers at the time was a great radio broadcaster, started in Peoria, Illinois. He was fantastic. He reaches out and he says, if you want my help, I'll help you. And so for 2 weeks, we worked together, and he taught me how to be a radio play-by-play guy.
Mm.
And I basically, at that point, watched a game on TV with the volume off and recorded myself into a cassette deck with a microphone and a cord and mailed them the tape, and they hired me on the spot.
Nice.
And so thus begins my real broadcasting career, but not as an analyst. So now I do 4 years of radio play-by-play for the NBA as a former first-round pick. That's only been done in the history of the league by me and by a guy named Hot Rod Hundley, who's a long time, now passed on, but great broadcaster. He was the first pick in the draft back in the 50s out of West Virginia, and he became a 30-year broadcaster for the New Orleans and Utah Jazz, and he was fantastic. But he and I are the only two to do that.
Wow.
And so now, fast forward, Tim, and I've won 5 Emmys, and I transitioned from radio to TV. I became an analyst on TV for the Clippers for 20 years, and now I work for the Utah Jazz. So I'm still doing it. I still love it. It's always been a passion of mine, and even though it's not the only thing I do, it's fun. It's exciting, and if I have a game tomorrow, for example, that'll be the Utah Jazz and the Phoenix Suns, and I'll dig into the minutia and the details and create phrases and thoughts and try and bring the best I got to the fan base of Salt Lake City in Utah to, lighten up that game and make it come alive for them.
Right. Wow. Well, we're 31 minutes into the first segment here. I've got to take a break, pay some bills, and I'm going to come back with the tech entrepreneurship, and I'm going to have you help me pronounce some of these names. So, can you stand by for 1 second?
Yep, I sure can.
Okay, stand by. Podcast will be right back.
You got it.
Buying a gun is no ordinary purchase. Whether you're a hunter, competitive shooter, or self-defense is your priority, there are many kinds of guns and many kinds of training programs. You use your brain all the time. You will rarely need to use your gun. Before you find yourself in a situation where you need to make a critical decision, make sure your training is the best you can get. It could be the difference between life and death, or freedom or detention. For the best quality training, check out permittocarry.us. If you live in Minnesota or Wisconsin or even Florida, give Gene German a call, 612-388-2403. That's Permit to Carry US. Or call Gene German at 612-388-2403.
Welcome back to the Hutcast. Mike Smith is in the via remote studio, and I left off in the last segment of tech entrepreneurship. With your involvement with tech startups like, is it Roboto?
It is.
And Tula Health, Data Mob?
Data mobility, short for data mobility would be Data Mob. Yeah.
Okay. What intrigues you about the tech industry, and how do you see yourself in technology shaping the future of sports broadcasting? And then what are you doing now with it?
Oh, what a great question. So if you remember back a little ways, there was a little bit of fear of the unknown, right? Like what does a guy who's been an athlete his whole life, although a little bit of an academic scholar, what does he do? How does he find himself? And in today's world, I didn't play in an NBA where we made enough money to retire.
Sure.
Especially with 10 kids and colleges and life moving fast and a couple of stock market crashes and
right.
You name it, right? Life moves on. You keep working. You keep reinventing yourself. And, I think of my father who worked one job for 40 years and retired. It's just not the world that is today, and it's not the world I've grown up in. So I just began to, and this is going back about 6 years, I began to say yes to things. So I just began to, and I think it goes from like my high school football where I just said yes, and it ended up being the thrill of my life. This summer, I tried to qualify for the United States Senior Amateur in golf.
Huh.
I didn't grow up a golfer, and I made it.
Wow.
Like I consider that a much more difficult thing to achieve than making the NBA, believe it or not, for a guy 6'10" who didn't grow up playing golf. And I just have begun to say yes and go for things. And so
you're doing the Jim Carrey. Yes, man. He never says no. He always.
Yeah. And he's so talented, but and I'm not an expert at anything, but I'm good at a few things. And so I'm also a quick learner. And so I got approached by these guys who had developed an app, and it was called Ghostcast. And I said, yes, I'll be involved. And that journey with Ghostcast, although not fruitful, taught me so much about the investment world, about pitching a new startup, about connecting people, connecting money to a deal, connecting ideas to people, connecting person A to person B. And I realized that I had a value and asset with people I knew, my ability to present, and my ability to, maybe simplify maybe hard things in terms of the tech world and explain them in layman's terms.
Huh.
And so I began to modulate and orchestrate my new business career. And so along the way, I meet a guy who's fabulous at all the things I just described. And I brought him into one of my deals.
Okay.
And we so connected, and he's had a distinguished career in Los Angeles and wildly successful. But we found a kinship with one another with how he presents, his full of integrity, his character, the companies he aligned with. And he then tasked me, why don't you go find, since you live in, Utah, where tech is booming, why don't you go find a company that's on the rise? And I'll help you align with them. And we together will help that company boost their sales. And we will connect them to some of the biggest CEOs and CFOs in the world.
Wow.
And we'll see if we can do that with one company. He says, I already do it, and I do it very successfully. He says, but I'm going to tell you this, and here's the one thing. He says, I will not attach my name to anything that's not best in class. So, A, I better like the CEO or the founder. B, they better have something really innovative. And C, they better be headed up the pipeline. Like they've got something so unique, and whether that's cost savings methodology or a tech that's so innovative that it's going to change the landscape.
Wow.
And so I kind of set out to do that. And in the midst of doing that, formed an alignment with him and a little company together. And you could call it a consulting company or a hyper sales company. But in essence, what we do is we end up representing companies that are on the rise, and we connect them to places they can't get to. But we help them with biz dev, we help them with presentation, we help them with go-to-market, and we help them mostly with storytelling. So he, in a previous life, was making decisions on what movies should be made. And I, in a previous and current life, take large bits of information and modify them and minimize them into small bits of digestible information that are usable on television.
Sure.
So I'll take a 5-minute story and get it into a 40-second little piece that is usable on a TV clip, because that's what I do for a living. And so we're able to do that together. So the companies you mentioned, whether they're SnagTag or Roboto or Tula or Data Mob and others, Cardio Miracles and other, we align with those companies and then give our best efforts to boost their success and help their growth. And lo and behold, Tim, I found a new, call it money path or career path, that still allows me to broadcast and be on TV, but at the same time, finally build something for my family and my posterity, which as a broadcaster and as an athlete, I really didn't have the opportunity, because in both those fields, I was only as good as my last performance.
Sure.
But in this case, I could build something. There's another company called Apollo Streams. They are a small company here in Utah that is streaming all of high school sports with cell phones and iPads.
Wow.
And I aligned with them and am building a junior broadcasting program for them with a subscription model where I create video content with all of my broadcasting friends that teaches young junior high kids how to broadcast. They can just log on and pay a subscription fee and get the best content in the world from Emmy award-winning broadcasters. And in the case that their athletic career doesn't pan out, they start creating reels with their phone and high school sports at a very young age, and they'll become tomorrow's broadcasters. So I don't know that I'm great at this yet, but it's been about a 5-year journey now, and I'm having the time of my life. And I guess I've just realized that when you say yes to things, you open up your mind to new worlds where you could potentially thrive. They don't all hit it big, but it's just fascinating to me, and I'm loving it, and it's super cool. And I'm in a world now where I've identified what skills I might have that are really starting to be accentuated. So I'm super excited.
Well, when you get to that point, remember to mention Hutcast so that I can join up on that.
For sure. Well, with your following, you're well ahead of my help, but it's great to be with you.
Now, talk to me about Cardio Miracle. Is it Miracle Mile or Cardio Miracle?
It is called Cardio Miracle.
Okay, and you've just give us a heck of a description on this whole thing. How does that fit in with the Miracle Mile or Miracle?
So the founder of Cardio Miracle, John Hewlett, who we could say serendipitously discovered Cardio Miracle because went in for an appendix and operation, like a ruptured appendix, and then they discovered that his heart wasn't healthy. And he was an insurance genius, had built up a fantastic portfolio in the insurance business, but they were about to open him up and do quadruple bypass.
Oh.
And for whatever reason or another, they didn't, because of, I think, the conflicting appendix at the same time, but gave him these, strict admonitions. You better get your heart in good health. And so he, long story short, gave up his insurance career to then get into the nutritional world and try and solve his heart health. He did that with a company and became a distributor for a company and helped them create a product which facilitated the production of nitric oxide.
Okay.
And through all this, he discovered that nitric oxide is like the number one ingredient to arterial strength and capillary cleansing and increased blood flow and these healthy arteries, which ended up kind of cleansing his heart health. And thus he never had the so-called needed surgery. And he then evolved from that nutritional company and said, I want to use the finest ingredients. And they ended up having, some sort of a bifurcation because they felt differently about it. And he ended up going out on his own, left that $1 million a year business and started Cardio Miracle some 10, 12 years ago.
Wow.
And has created a product. This product, while I'm not a doctor, I am an athlete and a health fitness advocate and knowledgeable person in that regard. I'm a yogi and a weightlifter and a swimmer and still a competitor in pickleball and high-level amateur golf, even though no more basketball. I began taking this product.
Okay.
Met the founder, John. He became aware of my not only relationship to him and health and fitness, and we formed an alignment where I'm now happy to represent this product. But it's a product that contains the finest ingredients in the world, meaning organic vegetables and beets and so on, but also arginine and citrulline, which are substances which get into your blood vessels and your endothelial walls and help produce the gas nitric oxide. And nitric oxide in the walls of the arteries and veins ends up producing and is responsible for vasodilation. The primary function of that is to help smooth muscle tissue in your blood vessels. They widen, they dilate, they contract or relax, and nitric oxide becomes this molecule which communicates with blood in its liquid form, and it's essential for life and many critical body functions like keeping the arteries young and flexible. And anyway, I sound like I'm preaching, but
not at all.
A man is only as old as his arteries are.
Okay.
And if you can keep these arteries flexible, because they're going to become less flexible with age and disease, right? That's caused mostly by depleting levels of nitric oxide production as we get older every decade. Almost like a woman's eggs, you produce less and less of this nitric oxide, and they can decline over 10% per decade. But if you can keep this production up, then your arteries can stay young and flexible and free-flowing in the blood. Now, that's not Mike Smith, a doctor, talking. Those are studies that have been proven. And those studies can be researched and found. Dr. Judy Menkovitz is one study which clearly describes any of this. But I can't speak to that because I'm not a doctor. I've read those studies. I might believe in those studies. But what I believe in is this incredibly easily soluble and digestible powder form one product that I can mix with water every morning and then every evening. And in essence, Tim, it's replaced my need to, I don't know, hydrate or eat in the morning right away. And it's also replaced any need I ever had for a sugar fix in the evening before bed. So I would say, combined with me eliminating sugar just kind of serendipitously because I like this product, I've gone from, in about 6 months, 230 pounds and let's say 14% body fat, which is well below, say the 20 I should be at my age, to 218 pounds and 7% body fat, and sleeping great, waking up with renewed energy, can't wait to get to the gym first thing, competing in pickleball. I won my first tournament that I competed in with my daughter, a mixed doubles, near pro level, 4.5.
Wow.
I told you already that I qualified for the United States Senior Amateur this year, although Cardio Miracle would have nothing to do with golf and your performance, except that I feel great.
Right.
I can practice longer. I can swing. It's helped remove all the inflammation out of my body. That's a major thing for somebody who played basketball forever.
Right.
So at my age, I should have ankle pain and knee pain and back pain. I have none of those. None of those. That could be due to my yoga. It could be due to my swimming and my lifting. But I'm telling you that I feel 10 years younger than I am on the calendar. And it's incredible. I feel like, now, what I haven't done is gotten on a treadmill and done an oxygen test, right?
Okay.
Where you do a stress test on your heart. And I should have done it 6 months ago before I started taking the product, and do it now.
So you're going to have an AB
but it's
reading.
Something I'm going to take. I purposely had my blood tested 4 months ago, and it's now time for me to go back and get the readings again. I cannot wait to see what they are. So you could have me on again, or you could have me on just a little snippet of your program and say, hey, did you ever take those blood tests post, Cardio Miracle for 4 months, and what were the results? I'll be able to tell you, and we'll tell you honestly if there's been any change and what those changes would be. But it's fantastic, and I guess I could tell you, not unlike my tech business, where I refuse to take on a company, and this would be monthly, that I'm saying no to 3 or 4 companies now that they realize what I can do.
Okay.
I'm saying no to companies who I don't think move the needle enough. It's not because I'm a jerk. It's not because I'm arrogant. I just won't waste the time of my contacts if I don't feel like they have something super sine qua non, right?
Sure.
Latin phrase for without equal. If they're not best in class, I'm not doing it. And so it took me a while to come to that conclusion with Cardio Miracle, but I'm convinced, not only by what I've read, the studies, the doctor reports, but it's more to me the real feeling I have inside. And so I promote it wholeheartedly. I'm introducing it to my world of the NBA, and hopefully that gets me to every sports team in America and every sports team across the world, because I want university athletes on this product. I want anybody who is vaccinated on this product. I just think it's really almost godly inspired.
Hold on,
and
back
sounds
up.
Crazy, but that's how I feel.
You said anybody who is or isn't vaccinated.
Well, both, right? The spike proteins of some of the vaccines.
Yeah.
They're designed to attack the endothelial walls, and Cardio Miracle, although, let's say, not proven, but from what I know from the arterial strength and the blood flow,
Okay.
this would be counteractive to some of the ill effects we've seen.
So your meters turn all the way up to 11. I get that. And you're feeling good, but we're not 20 anymore. I'm 57, and I feel it. I'm not in the sports world, but I'm in the tech world. I'm in the computer car world. I'm in building hot rod worlds. And I'm over a hood for a long time. I'm running machines. I feel it in all my joints. What the question I have now is, you have 10 kids. Okay, you see where I'm going with this? You got 10 kids. Does the miracle help you staying up with those 10 kids? Because that's a lot of kids to be chasing after.
I'm not sure I know where you're going with it, but if you're talking about
how do you balance that professional life?
Are you talking about intimacy and performance? If you are,
no.
I feel better than I ever have in that regard. So if you're not,
no,
that's totally fine. If you're just talking about energy and chasing these 10 kids,
yes.
Oh gosh, yes, I do. And granted, most of my kids are old, right? I have 8 of them that are out of the house. My final 2 are sophomores in high school. But although the older 8 are off the payroll, thank goodness, the only 3 are married. And so, there's 5 older, I say older, but, anywhere from 24 to 32 who are single. And although all of them embarking on, a successful quest and career, which I'm super proud of, we stressed education. They're all doing really well. I almost have one of everything. I got a doctor. I got a pilot. I got a volleyball coach. I got an English teacher. I got a digital marketer. What else do I have? I got a summer sales guy, an entrepreneur.
Nice.
I have a lawyer, and so on and so forth. And now we think we're getting an architect and a musician with the last 2. So but yes, I'm healthy and I'm chasing those kids. And as we open the show, Tim, the most important things to me in life are God and family, and in a world that I think is really conflicted and confused these days. And sometimes those conflicting lines, find their way down to right and wrong. And I want to be here, and I want to be that voice of reason to my children.
Yep.
Not where I'm imposing my will upon them, but that I'm in a advisory role. Yeah, someone they can turn to. Dad, what do you think about this? And Dad, you've been through this. What do you think about this? And how do you raise a superstar? Right? That's a fantastic question. How do you do that? They all come out, Tim, they all come out different. I have 10, and not one of them is exactly like I am.
I suppose.
And I don't mean athletically or physically. I mean emotionally and mentally. Like if just one of my 10 were the carbon copy of me, I would know exactly how to raise them, what motivates them, how to react to discipline, how to intrigue them, how to inspire them, how to chastise them, how to get the best out of them. But they're all some sort of a combo. And so they're different.
The compass is spinning, right?
I'm a good person, okay? Like I don't have bad habits. And I think just by being a good person in life, I think it's pretty easy to be a good father.
Sure.
I think it's really hard in life to be an outstanding father or an outstanding spouse and husband. Like I don't have drug habits and I don't have criminal habits. I don't. And so those things, they don't enter into my way of thinking. And so I could float through life and be average to good at the husband and father thing. And that's fine, right? It's maybe it's ahead of the norm. I don't even know if it's ahead of the norm. Maybe it's average, maybe it's below average. But I think it takes effort and work to be great at those 2 things. And I think those are my 2 most important callings here on earth.
Sure.
I think those are the 2 hardest to become great at, but also the ones we should try our best to be great at.
So after all this information, and what a wonderful, wonderful podcast here, I'm glad you came on, and I thank you for that. I just, how do you balance this professional life with the family commitments and roles? I mean, because that's 10 kids, 2 grandkids. The only thing we're missing is a partridge in a pear tree.
I'm married to the woman of my dreams, and she is the CEO of the home, and she's just an amazing person. She had a career before as an actress and a model. She had a career as a flight attendant. She was CEO of a medical company at one point, and she's just like the CEO of the home.
Yeah.
And so that means, finding out the very best that my children that are still in home and 15-year-olds need. It is the responsible one and the one who's helping the young mothers, our children who are just having their first child and helping them through that stage. And she's fantastic. And so she takes care of herself. She cooks homemade meals and eats right, and she works out. She's a very young 61-year-old phenom, and I love her to death. And there's no way I could balance it all without what she does, because work is work, and there needs to be time for family, and there needs to be time for, my jazz broadcasts at the same time. But we try and prioritize, church on the weekends and family events and take care of the rest of it. And it's not easy.
No.
But she's an alpha, and I'm grateful for her.
Got to have the alphas, right?
Yeah.
Mike, thank you for your time today. I know you're running around and.
No, you're most welcome, and congrats on all your success. I can't believe your reach. That's just. It's just amazing. So I'm honored that you wanted to have me on, and it's fun. It's fun to tell stories, and it's fun to have somebody ask you questions and admire your resume. It's we live in a world where comparison is everything, right? And I at times don't feel like I'm much of anything, but I just know I'm going to keep trying and try hard to be great at whatever I sink my teeth into. So it's really, really been fun being on.
Well, in the words of Joe Dirt, or Dirte, you just keep on keeping on, right?
True.
Well, thanks again.
Good luck to you. Yeah. Is this your cell number that was texting me before?
Yes. Please save it for me, and I'll put yours on mine.
Okay, Tim. Thank you.
Thank you, and have a good rest of your weekend. And I'll and let's catch up again soon and see how that cardio works for you.
You got it.
All right then.
Really appreciate it. Okay.
Bye bye.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mike Smith, former NBA basketball player, current broadcaster for the Utah Jazz, and I've discovered a product that can change your life. It's called Cardio Miracle. It contains the finest of ingredients anywhere, organic vegetables, beets, and I try and be a healthy guy, but the thing that it does contain is arginine and citrulline, which helps promote the production of nitric oxide, the Nobel Peace-winning nitric oxide from 1998 that our body tends to produce less and less of as we get older. It is replete with that production, and our body needs it to have arterial strength, heart health, and capillary cleansing. And I've been taking it for 6 months, and I feel fantastic.
And that's a wrap for Hutcast. Hutcast is, again, a pragmatic approach to seeing things how some people see them. If you like our show, give us a thumbs up on the Facebook site. Again, for Hutcast, thank you again. Have a wonderful evening.